Anna Shiri Bosch Harrison. And we also have a scholar and a former renowned Indian diplomat, Krishnan Srinivasan, who has lectured today at Lund University. So please, all of you are so welcome to this program tonight. Det här programmet kommer att bestå av olika punkter som står i programmet ni fått. Ambassadören kommer att börja och berätta om Tagore och hans roll i Indien idag. The ambassador will start talking about Rabindranath Tagore, the Nobel Prize winner in 1913, and his role today. After that, the Indian choir in Lund will perform. The Indian choir in Lund is led by Bobo Munshi Eklund and Thomas Wiehe. Thomas Wiehe is not here today, but only Bobo is here today. And after the Indian choir, we take a break. Saregama choir, the children's choir, Indian children's choir in Lund, will perform and sing a beautiful Rabindranath Tagore song. After that, professor from Uppsala, Heinz Werner Wessler, who is very good insight in Rabindranath Tagore and the Nobel Prize and Rabindranath Tagore's journeys to Sweden in 1921 and 1926. He's coming from Germany, and he will arrive here by taxi sometime after half past 7, and so his presentation will be at 8 o'clock. And after his presentation, we will again let the Indian choir sing some bhajans and some more Rabindranath Tagore songs. Anledningen till att vi är här idag, det är alltså vi firar Rabindranath Tagores, att det är 100 år sedan han fick Nobelpriset 1913. It's 100 years since Rabindranath Tagore, as the first and only so far Indian writer, got the Nobel Prize Award in literature. 2 years back, we also had a big celebration here. Then we celebrated the 150th birth anniversary of Rabindranath Tagore. We had in Copenhagen, Lund, Stockholm, Uppsala, but now we make a program on the Nobel Prize, and we are especially happy that we are going to have this program because the Swedish embassy in Delhi, they planned for a big Jubilee celebration in October in Kolkata, and the Indian choir, we plan to go there and be part of the program. That will be nice. And for those of you who don't know very much about Rabindranath Tagore, he was born in 1861, passed away in 1941. He was not only a writer and a poet, he was a brilliant artist in the end of his life. He was a reformer, pedagogic reformer. He created the university in Shantiniketan, fantastic open air university. And he was not the least a very important person in the freedom struggle of India. I mean, he was a friend of Mahatma Gandhi, and they worked side by side. Different ideologies, you could say. Rabindranath Tagore was a rationalist. He was very much in this world. Well, anyway, Rabindranath Tagore, he was the one who gave Mahatma Gandhi the title Mahatma, great soul. And in response, Mahatma Gandhi gave Rabindranath Tagore his title Guru, great teacher. So they were on very friendly terms, even though they had a big discussion in the 1930s on ideological matters. And the Indian choir in Lund was created in 2012, last year. Förra våren, indiska kören startade. And we sing mostly songs by Rabindranath Tagore, but also spiritual bhajans. That is mostly Thomas Wiehe's part. And behind the choir we have an organization called Föreningen för Indiskt Svenskt Kulturutbyte, Association for Indo-Swedish Cultural Exchange. FISK in Swedish acronym. And we hope to not only have this choir, but also have other events, getting a space for Indian artists coming here, dance groups, musicians. We have in Copenhagen there is a very active music association, which is our model for what this could become. But so far we're mostly concerned with the Indian choir. Now I let the floor open for Mrs. Ambassador, please.
My name is Vanashri Bose Harrison. I'm the Indian ambassador who was accredited to Sweden in August last year. It is my second visit to Lund, and I'm very fond of your town because it's a university town, and each time I come and I spend some time on the streets. Unfortunately, Mr. Eklund makes sure that I don't spend as much time as I would like to. But the little time that I spend, I see a lot of youngsters talking to each other, communicating with each other, and it always fills me with, not you arrive before 10 o'clock. Professor Heinz is amongst us. That makes me even more nervous. But as I was saying, please do. As I was saying, Mr. Eklund is my boss when I come to Lund, and when he asked me to speak at today's function, I couldn't say no. But I do want to say, before I say anything else, that I am not a specialist of literature. I have read Rabindranath Tagore because those of you here from Bengal or India would know by my middle name, Bose, that I am a Bengali as well. So it's almost compulsory for all Bengalis to have read something of Rabindranath Tagore. But that in no way makes me a specialist or gives me any great background to be able to speak on the subject of would Rabindranath Tagore have got a Nobel Prize today. But I did prepare and did read a little bit for speaking to you. And what I would like to do is share with you what the 1913 Nobel citation said as the reason why the award was being given to him. Because of the profound sensitivity, fresh and beautiful verse by which, with consummate skill, he, that is Tagore, has made his poetic thought, expressed in his own English words, a part of the literature of the West. So, why did he get his award? Not just because his poetry was beautiful, not just because his thoughts and his writings were so inspiring and so accessible that he remains, to my knowledge, the only poet whose poems are the national anthems of not one but two countries today, India and Bangladesh. Yet, did he get the award for his poetry? Or did he get his award for what his poetry achieved at that time in 1913? What did his poetry achieve? I was talking earlier with my senior colleague, Dr. Srinivasan. I'm reminded of the joke of another very senior colleague of mine who said, well, earlier I was a distinguished diplomat, now I'm an extinguished diplomat. But he's certainly not an extinguished diplomat. But when we were talking earlier about this subject, I was very heartened to hear him say something that I had felt was the result of my own little bit of research that I did, that Tagore was perhaps the first Asian intellectual who reached out to the West. It's not that Asia has not produced philosophers, has not produced writers, has not produced thinkers. But we remained in our world. And the connection with the West was missing. So, Rabindranath Tagore, Gurudev, as Mahatma Gandhi called him, but as all Bengalis call him, Robi Thakur, as if he was, a relative of yours. That is so typical, you will find amongst Bengalis. He made that effort. He reached out to the West, and by a happy circumstance, he came amongst people who welcomed him with open arms at that time. Renowned poet W.B. Yeats, who said of his poetry that this is what I perhaps dreamed of in my life. This product of the supreme philosophy, supreme thinking. He welcomed Rabindranath Tagore and he facilitated, let us realize that he facilitated very much the acceptance and admiration of Rabindranath Tagore in the West, which ultimately culminated in his Nobel Prize. His book, which was the first book cited, there were other books cited as well, but Gitanjali, which means song offerings, offerings of songs. It was written in English, which was the translation. The poems had been written even earlier, but the English translations were ready and published with the guidance of Yeats, and some have claimed that he did more than guide, but there is really no evidence to prove that. Was published in March 1912, and by November that year, they had already been reprinted 10 times. So he was clearly, I would say, the Beatles of that period. He just caught on. And the Swedish Nobel Academy recognized that, recognized his merit, but also recognized the important role that he had played as being a bridge between the East and the West. He was the first Asian, in fact the first non-European, to get the Nobel Prize in Literature. In fact, somewhere I had read that he was the first non-European to get a Nobel Prize at all, but I haven't done enough research to know whether that was true or not, but it could well have been the case. His competitors at the time included writers like Thomas Hardy, and therefore it was not that he just, had an easy walkover. Clearly, it was a strong competition that he had at the time, and here was this man who looked so different. He had already begun to cultivate this long beard that you see in his pictures. He dressed in these flowing robes, and he spoke a different, I don't mean a different language in terms of a different, speaking in Bengali. Even when he spoke English, he spoke it with a different sense of feeling. He spoke it with a different sense of emotion. And that, I think, is what captured the imagination of the West. It captured certainly the imagination of the Nobel Committee. The presentation speech by, pardon my mispronunciation, by Harold Hjärna, who was the chairman of the Nobel Committee of the Swedish Academy, he talked about Rabindranath Tagore's, the poems, their idealistic tendency, but he had written the poems also in English. This was mentioned again and again in the speech that is given, as you may know, before the Nobel Prize award. He could not actually collect it himself in that year, he could not travel. But at the ceremony, when the citation is done and the speech is given, this fact was mentioned more than once, that here is a poet who is original, who is different, but who has also taken the trouble to put his thoughts into English. His award owed, as I said, a lot to the fact that he reached out. And why did he reach out? He reached out not because he was a poet, he reached out because he was a universalist. He was a universalist before the word perhaps was coined. He truly was a man ahead of his time who thought beyond Bengal, who thought even beyond India, I would say. The same citation goes on, the same speech goes on to talk about his efforts at reconciling two spheres of civilization which are widely separated. It speaks of him as a prophet, as a mystic. These words naturally were, I think, this image was naturally strengthened by his physical image. Today, perhaps he would be accused of having fabricated that image because it was a good PR exercise. But these PR firms didn't exist at the time, and Tagore went as he was, a universalist, a man who was reaching out, but who didn't feel he had to fit into anything. And I, with my short study of what happened to his, the admiration that surrounded him after the Nobel Prize, his reputation in the West did not survive for very long. His reputation in Bengal, in India, continues. But within 2 decades, even his great admirer, Yeats, was reported to have said, "Damn Tagore." Other authors had begun to write him off. Why? My belief, and as I'm happy to have the confidence of Amartya Sen, Professor Amartya Sen, who wrote a really long but very thoughtful piece about Tagore in 1997, Tagore and India. So I'm really, sort of cannibalizing what he said, but I could feel the same thing when I was reading. He was not fitting into these categories that some of the Western authors were trying to put him into. Rabindranath Tagore was not a person who, just because he was supposed to be somebody who wrote about philosophy, somebody who wrote about religion, somebody who wrote about the deeper side of things, yet this was the man who could write songs for the children. Yet this was the man who could write literally nonsensical verses, not nonsensical, but really sort of like nursery rhymes. He refused to be boxed into any category. And this, at that time, surprisingly, was not accepted by the Western interlocutors. And 2 decades after his Nobel Prize, Tagore somehow just fell off the bookshelves. I say that, but I'm only talking about, I think, large numbers. People who had insights, people who had the right